I'm Christopher Shotola-Hardt, and this is my show for 2010. This is my fourth half-gallery show here at Blackfish, and all four shows, actually, interestingly, have had the similar theme. I actually have two themes running, and we're looking at a painting here, which is part of my body of work that deals with family histories. I've done lots of paintings either about my own family history, other people's family histories. This photograph, this woman, on the back side of the photo, I learned that her name was Mo-Ann, and I did not know her. She's part of a series that I call the Anonymous Album series, and I've done 47 paintings from photographs from this photo album. I typically will take the people out of their environments, or I'll bring things into the environment. In this case, you notice two birds in here that were not in the original picture. I've also added some furniture items. In this case, there's a dresser in front of the window that would be able to support the stand for the taxidermied bird. This is another from the Anonymous Album series. I call this Nana and Papa, this farming couple, and they are joined here almost as like a family group by these birds. And I use taxidermied birds here again as my models. These were from the Pioneer Museum in Tillamook, Oregon, in the Natural History Room upstairs on the second floor. I enjoy these types of works, taking an old master painting from art history and removing the person that was being depicted, keeping the background the same, and putting in a bird who is wearing the same necklace, who is wearing the similar drapery around the pelican's body. This again is a pelican from a taxidermy model from the Tillamook Museum. And this painting, the background, is taken from a Piero di Cosimo painting from Italy in the late 1400s. And I've kept the title the same. This was the woman's name, Simonetta Vespuccia. And I also will try to paint the bird in such a way that it really blends nicely with the painting style of the background. I call this classroom birds. One of the science teachers in the building where I teach has a lot of taxidermied animals, and this is a still I've taken from while sitting in the front row of her classroom looking up at a shelf of bird specimens. These are portraits of taxidermied birds, and they're very small in scale. I enjoy working in intimate scale. This one is only 3 by 3 inches, and I'm delighted to have found a vintage frame that blended nicely with the color palette of this oil painting. Likewise here, from a taxidermied bird, this little goldfinch, I found a frame from South America that had this pounded pewter, and I was able to incorporate some of that formal language of the design into the background. This is acrylic paint and mixed media, lots of layers of vellum and tissue paper that I'm drawing upon and painting. Portrait of a photographer who lives in Portland. This is Leanne, and all of the images that go around the picture relate to things, family pictures that were in her house. This is her sitting in her favorite chair in front of a velvet curtain with the window light coming here and illuminating her hair. She's holding her camera here. This is a painting, acrylic painting on canvas. This painting is called Counting Birds No. 2, and I have 2 paintings with the Counting Birds idea. This shows a lot of bird heads, and they're interlocking bird heads. And so I called it Counting Birds. I was thinking about the Christmas bird count that the Audubon Society sponsors, and that phenomenon of finding birds out in wilderness. And you'll notice as you focus on one bird, the birds around it disappear, and then if you move to the next bird, then this bird disappears. And I like that idea of not always being able to keep track of the birds that you're seeing.
I was thinking of abstract painting here.
It is like an abstract painting, definitely. Yeah, abstraction. This bird is called the Yamhill Street Flicker, and this piece of wood here is from our old porch. And the post, we had to replace the post, and this bird was always pecking on our house. It's a woodpecker, of course, and on our cypress tree, and I think probably led to some of the damage done on the post and why we had to
indentation here.
Yeah, this is where the post was coming out of. This is another bird painting that's quite abstract. This is an oil painting on illustration board. This is Counting Birds #1. And this one is almost like a game in trying to find all of the birds. Again, the negative space surrounding one bird is the other bird. Here's a swan here, and then the negative space around the neck, you'll see the beak and an eye there.
Oh,
sometimes you'll notice a bird right here who is then part of another bird, the ear thing. There's a bird there and a bird there.
You're trying to confuse the viewer.
I'm just trying to entertain myself while I paint. This is another piece that's an art historical reproduction. There were two nude women sitting at the edge of this bath, and I removed them and put these parrots in and tried to keep the body language and the negative space surrounding the women very similar to the original painting. This was originally a piece from the school of Fontainebleau. This I call Under the Pier. It's a lot of mixed media collage elements with paint built up. These are water birds, again from taxidermied models. These pieces also have some art historical references, but in this case I don't know the original artist, but they're from engravings from 18th and 17th century bird illustrators. And these consist of many layers of translucency and crackled paint effects. Very small scale. These are just 4 by 6 inches. This painting is called Coastal Birds, and most of my models were from the Tillamook Museum of taxidermied birds, and this has a very loose kind of structure. There are multiple ground planes and picture planes all interacting. There's a raven here, there's some gulls and lots of gulls, crows flying up here. I'm enjoying this one because I'm letting some of my underlayers show in the final painting here, just the silhouette where I may have painted a more detailed bird, or being comfortable with leaving this bird just with a few strokes and not going for any kind of real detail, allowing some of the drips that might show, and you see some pencil lines coming through. So this
is one of your later works.
This was about in the middle of the show. So when I was a boy, I wanted to be an ornithologist. People are always asking me, well, why do you paint all these birds? It's been a lifelong interest of mine. Now that being said, I don't paint birds as though they're field guides. I like to paint birds as though they're portraits of birds. I like them to be as immediate and interpreted emotionally as I would in my portraits of people. And I often will position the bird's head so that in a way they're like a painted portrait, where they're engaging, they're looking at the viewer, they're right there. You'll notice that in this painting, for example, right next to here, this bird on the berm in the foreground is engaged, looking at the viewer much in the same way the woman in the fur coat is. And I try to put them on actually equal footing, the people and the birds. I think that makes it more interactive for the viewer.
Your sense of movement also with the birds flying.
Yeah, sense of movement, and
then where the person is very still, standing still.
This is an oil pastel piece on illustration board. It's called Sandhill Cranes and Gull.
What's interesting is the like some of the cranes are just outlines.
Yeah.
And the others are painted.
And that's interesting to me, to have different levels of rendering. Some things are left sketchy or even erased, and a remnant of the image remains, and then going in and rendering more fully another part of the image. I like that in work. It gives it kind of an openness, and I enjoy looking at work, because then I can always look at the work in a different space, mental space. I find that very interesting.
So what's the last piece that you did in the show?
The last piece I did in the show was the first piece that we looked at